it going, everybody? It's a new week, so that means it's a new episode here at the Rust Belt Report on Breakdown Buffalo, affiliate of Buffalo Fanbase. I am, of course, your host, Ryan Coghill, and I am here with a good friend of mine, the head of the Buffalo Fanbase / Breakdown Buffalo. I don't know what you want to call it, organization, entertainment division.
Conglomerate. No, I'm just one.
I'm here with my man Justus, who's here to talk some Buffalo Bills football. So how's it going, man?
I am great. I didn't do my podcast Tuesday. Me and K-Man decided to take a day off yesterday. So this is actually my first pod of the week. So I'm used to talking football 3 times a week. This is my first time on Thursday. And then, so I'm feeling pretty fresh, bro. But I'm feeling good. How you doing, man?
That's good. I'm doing, man. I can't complain. Like I said before, we were getting ready to go. I'm going on vacation here, first time this year, so I'm feeling fresh. But and we're gonna talk a little bit about this, but I'm still riding high off that Christian Wade interview just because of how open he was and how open he is about just a number of things. He was open about the fact that he has opportunities back in the rugby world, as well as like he has actual opportunities with NFL teams that are, existing right now. He was open about the fact, and this is what we are going to talk about here in a bit, that he had the opportunity to play in regular season NFL games if it wasn't for one rule 2 years ago and his injury last year. So we're going to get into that, but you know me, I'm a big fan of Christian Wade. I'm a big fan of him as a player, as a person, as a story, and so we're kind of, I wouldn't say we're friends now. I'd say that we're acquaintances, but there might be more stuff with him in the future. We had a good report and a good time. I know his agent now. His agent is fantastic. So we're gonna see. We're gonna see what happens. But I'm still riding high off that because it was one of the coolest things I've done. My first player interview, and it's a guy that I'm a fan of. So I mean, you can't be mad at that.
Yeah, because I remember even before, like, you got the opportunity to interview him, you were always a big Christian Wade guy. You talked about it often. You were like, Christian Wade is going to be the guy to make the team and stuff like that. So that's pretty
he dope. Almost was on multiple different occasions. He almost was. So I wasn't wrong. So
fair enough.
so I wasn't wrong, but I wasn't right. We'll leave it at that. But so just to start off with that, I mean, talking about guys making teams, there were 2 really big, I guess you could say, re-additions to the Bills team in this past offseason in Shaq Lawson and Jordan Phillips. Obviously, Shaq Lawson goes all the way back to, the Rex Ryan days, and Jordan Phillips from a couple of years ago. He obviously spent that's in between that sandwich season in Arizona and helping to build that Arizona team. But they're back now. They're back in Buffalo. Jordan Phillips, Shaq Lawson actually followed Jordan Phillips kind of back here. So this is the first time, at least to my knowledge, that outside of like a salary cap move or something like that, that somebody that the team had let go came back. Now, there's other examples this season in Matt Barkley, who got cut, played for another team, and came back. So we have the multiple examples this season, but to my knowledge, since McDermott and Bean took over, Lawson, Phillips, Matt Barkley, these are the first times that some guys that have been let go in the past have really been coming back. So the question that I really want to talk about specifically, because we know Matt Barkley's role. Matt Barkley was always like he was the morale guy. Like him and McKenzie are like the morale guys. But Barkley, really helps prepare Josh for these games. So what about Shaq Lawson? What about Jordan Phillips? How are they going to reestablish themselves on the defense? Are there going to be guys that are come in as just a veteran presence? Or are there going to be guys that are going to come in and compete for a number 1 spot? What do you think?
Well, you have to remember when when Shaq Lawson and Jordan Phillips both left the team, they both left because they got paid. Because the Bills couldn't afford them or didn't necessarily want to pay that high of a price tag for them, but they went and they were paid because of high performance. You know, when they left, they were two of our three best defensive linemen on the team next to Jerry Hughes, right? So Shaq Lawson was extremely good in the run defense. Jordan Phillips he got more pressure on the quarterback than almost any other D line, or more sacks at least. I know he's our leading sack or something like that. So, and I've also been hearing a lot of things out of camp. Shaq Lawson actually has more sacks in camp than anybody else. More than Von Miller, more than Rousseau, more than anybody else on the team. Shaq Lawson is leading everybody. So, I mean, I think they're coming to do some damage. You know, they're coming. I don't know if people remember this, but like, remember when we were just becoming good as a football team, right? In that year, the 2019 year, like we were playing Dallas and stuff like that. You know, that game, the Thanksgiving game where you got them on this, you know, on the camera. They had an attitude, right? They had an aggressiveness. They brought that to our defense, right? It was more than just bringing it to our defensive line. They brought it to the entire defense. And when they left, I think our defense, I don't want to say got soft, but they definitely didn't have that same animal anymore, right?
Yeah.
And I think that you look at, like you said, Matt Barkley is Mr. Buffalo, but Jordan Phillips might also be Mr. Buffalo. Like, Coach Mookie, when they were, bringing them back in a press conference after their signing, he was like, "How does it feel to be back home?" And Jordan Phillips was like, "You said it. I'm back home." So like, this is a place that they love, and I think that they're not coming back just to play a role. I think they're coming back to do some damage, especially looking at Jordan Phillips. Jordan Phillips, that's a bad boy. I'm telling y'all, okay? Look, Jordan Phillips, Daquan Jones, and Tim Settle are all bad boys, and you sitting them next to Ed Oliver, who we all know is a bad boy, right? So I just think, man, this is about to be crazy, bro. Like, it's going to be so many talented individuals fighting for playing time, so it's going to be iron sharpens iron,
right? And I really like that. And so like you mentioned, so you brought up Ed Oliver really stepped up this past season. That was his big question mark was can he step up? Now the context around that is it issues with him as a player? Is it issues with the team developmentally, or is it just he doesn't have the tools around him? And I think he kind of beat all those expectations, and then beat the dead horse out of all of it by consistently playing at a higher level than he ever had before. And I shouldn't say that because the man loves horses, so I shouldn't say that. But he really did. He took all those theories, all those conversations, and kind of threw them out the window by elevating his game last season and making it consistent, which is the conversation that we have around Tremaine Edmonds and stuff like that. And those are guys that we'll talk about, at later points, either today or in the future. But, for me, out of these two guys, I was more heartbroken or really disappointed to see Jordan Phillips go. Like, I was disappointed. I know at first the conversation was around, it wasn't money. So then it had us wondering, like, man, why is Jordan Phillips leaving? Because he really did love, he really does and do love and does and did love this place as a player. But it's like, man, why is he leaving? And then he did say, when he came back in overtime, he's like, yeah, man, it was for the money. And he's like, I just realized in that my time in Arizona, like, money doesn't really mean that much when you had a team basically in Buffalo the way that it was. So, and like you pointed out, Jordan Phillips was our most productive, if not wasn't, like, he was the top 2 most productive defensive tackle on the team at that time. Now, like I said before, Shaq Lawson comes from, the Rex Ryan era of this team. He was one of the first, casualties when the new regime took over. And that makes sense because A, you want to bring in your own guys. B, you want to bring in new guys, especially if they don't fit the culture. You're not going to bring guys in from the bad culture. You know what I mean? And also, Shaq Lawson was primarily brought in because Rex Ryan and his brother switched our defense from a 4-3 to a 3-4. Now they're switching it back to a 4-3. So there was a lot that was working against Shaq in terms of, plus also his production while here in Buffalo wasn't that great compared to like what we're talking about now, where he's, in camp leading the team in sacks. And I mean, what he's done since he's left is he's gone to bad teams and has been productive to a certain extent, but not to the level that we're hearing out of camp. So I'm excited to have him back. I'm excited to see, because like, especially if this is his redemption tour, man. Like he's in his late 20s, so his time playing professional football is there's more of it's behind him than is in front of him, especially for the position he plays. Right, this is not Tom Brady, this is not Brett Favre, this is not So there's more behind him than is in front of him. But if this is his redemption tour, dude, Shaq Lawson and Jordan Phillips back together. Jordan Phillips, who, like you said, is already a monster on his own, is a scary proposition for the Bills. It's a scary proposition for the teams, but it's also a scary proposition for guys at that position on this team because, like you said, like I like Tim Settle. You and I watched Tim Settle highlights on this show after he was signed, and we're like, yo, this is him. This is the dude that's been sitting like third or fourth on, granted, a deep defensive tackle depth chart in Washington. But you're like, oh, dude, a steal. And it made you feel a little bit better about losing, Harrison Phillips. But you're like, oh, dude, this is an absolute steal. So
if there was anything that could have made me feel better about losing Harrison Phillips, it was Tim Settle, Jordan Phillips, and Daquan Jones. I was like, oh, you know what? Okay. We'll be good. I love Jordan Phillips. I love Harrison Phillips, but we'll be fine. You know what I mean? So we're good there.
Right. All right. So the next thing I want to do, and this is something that I don't do too often, but when I do, I like doing it because there's a lot of really great writers out there. And I definitely haven't written as much in terms of like Bills content that I was hoping to. But there are a lot of really great writers out there, and there's a lot of really great written content. And that's actually where, for me, when I'm getting ready for these shows, I literally go in. If there's already things I don't want to talk about, especially in the off season, I just go and I Google Buffalo Bills and I go to the news section. And there's a lot of great non-national news stuff covering the Bills. And so the first thing I wanted to do was bring up the Syracuse.com article written by some friends of the show here in Matt Perino and Ryan Talbot. And talk about 6 Bills not named Josh Allen the team can least afford to lose in 2022. So if you're interested in actually reading the article, that's the full name of the article. You can find it on Syracuse.com. And so it breaks it into offense and defense. So I wanted to do a little discussion. Do we agree that these are 6 players or 6 Bills not named Josh Allen that we can least afford to lose in 2022? So the first one, starting off, is and again, I think as we go through this, I think it's gonna be, pretty much a consensus that we can't lose these guys. I mean, these are names that you would assume would be on anybody's list. But the first name is Stephon Diggs, is a Bill that you can least afford to lose in 2022.
That's a no-brainer. Yeah.
Yeah. So now, and I mean, just to suss it out a little bit, a lot of naysayers for the Bills, there's a lot of naysayers for Stephon Diggs because he didn't leave Minnesota in the greatest of terms, but a lot of them look to his playoff performance where he had like less than 6 or 7 yards, no touchdowns, only like a handful of catches, and they're like, yo, look, he's washed, whatever. But that's not the case. You look at the fact that he's serving a role. And Buffalo fans, Vikings fans, Patriots fans were really going at him for this, of course. You gotta love to hate that Patriots fans are so committed to the cause of hating on Bills. But you look at his performance and you realize he performed a role because he allowed Gabe Davis to have those 4 touchdowns. He allowed Gabe Davis to pop off. And I constantly compare this to Pittsburgh, and I lived in. For those that don't know, though, I lived in PA. I watched the Steelers games. I watched them all year long. And this is when AB was still on there. Man, AB served a role on that Steelers team, and that role from 2019 forward, not 2019, it was actually probably before that, right? 2017-ish. That role forward when Juju got there was to take the double triple coverage so that Juju could catch the balls and make the plays. That's really your role as a number one wide receiver in today's NFL. Now, if you had like Megatron out there, I guarantee he's catching the ball no matter what, right? Like, it doesn't matter who's out there. You have Ocho Cinco out there, it doesn't matter. They're catching the ball because those are just dudes who go out there and that's what they do. But in today's NFL, guys like AB on that Pittsburgh team, guys like Stephon Diggs on this Bills team, their role is to basically attract the heat. Their role is to I don't know if you've seen Top Gun, like the new Top Gun yet, but I've seen it 5 times. All right, so I've
heard amazing things,
dude. Better than the
you
original.
And Jake.
Yeah, better than the original. Yeah. But basically, to put it in context of like Top Gun, they're wingmen, and it's up to Stephon Diggs to fly in between, his wingman and the enemy and take the heat off of them so that they can accomplish the mission. And that's Stephon Diggs' role. And I'm not sure you can really put that many other people in today's NFL in that role and have it work as successfully as it. 4 touchdowns against the Chiefs in playoff football. You know what I mean? Those are insane things to bring up. So second one is Deion Dawkins. And and a lot of people know, I
literally wrote my list down. Deion Dawkins is number 2. All right.
Okay. So and I know, and a lot of people know, I had some not great Deion Dawkins takes through a lot of the early part of last season. And I ate a lot of crow about that. And that's fine. I was wrong. But what do you got to say about Deion? Because like you said, you wrote your list down to kind of guess out what it was, and he's on there. So tell us a little bit about why Deion is one of the Bills that the team can least afford to lose.
Yeah, he's your anchor, right? He's your left tackle. He's your starting left tackle, your Pro Bowl left tackle. So if you're a Pro Bowler, it's safe to assume that person is a star. And I don't know if Deion Dawkins is a star, but he's scratching the surface of being a star. So I like Deion Dawkins. I think that COVID really made him a little inconsistent last year. So I would like to see how he is a full year healthy, just able to buckle down and under a new offensive line coach and having, obviously a little bit of a stronger unit this year. So when you consider Deion Dawkins, I would like to see him take that next step into being elite this year or somewhat close to elite, because I have potential for it. I love the energy he brings. I love the character he brings. He's a leader on the team. He's vocal. I like, man, his just who he is as a person is very intoxicating for people to be around. So I really like Deion Dawkins, and we can't lose him this year because I think when I look at my list, I kind of ran out of players at a point, and I was like, well, I didn't run out of players, but I was like, who's more important than who? And we're really, really deep on this team. Like, if we lose a player, it's not out of the realm possibility that someone else could do their job sufficiently, right? I think Deion Dawkins is one of the biggest gaps between, if Deion Dawkins is not there, the next guy is not close to as good as Deion Dawkins is.
Right, and we saw that last year. We saw how legitimately not having depth at that left tackle position is going to be detrimental to Josh's safety, to the offensive efficiency on the team. So there is an honorable mention here, and I do want to dispute it, but the honorable mention is Mitch Morse. And I want to dispute it a little bit because while Mitch Morse was healthy last year and he played all 17 games of the season, the center position wasn't as I don't want to say wasn't as good as it usually was because again, it goes back to the whole discussion of the offensive line was not playing as a unit for most of last season, especially at the beginning. But I think Mitch Morse, with his rather extensive injury history, again, he was healthy, did play all 17 games, but with his injury history, with the age that he's at, with the risk for more injuries, I wouldn't say that Mitch Morse is a guy that you can't really afford to lose because I've argued that the Bills should have invested in the last draft, if not two drafts, so at least one free agency cycle ago, invested in a replacement center, like preparing for that to happen or making it happen early. And they haven't. But I would argue that Mitch Morse, the man, isn't what you don't want to lose. It's the trust and the familiarity that Josh has with him, and that's not going to be there forever. So really, you want to bring in a guy who's at that same level or who can develop to that same level and bring them in early because, man, if these guys get on a roll this year, but you got to bring in a rookie center who was undrafted, you screwed yourself out of it when you could have drafted, Cole Strange in the first round like the Patriots did. Or, the third round if he was there where he was supposed to be. You could have gotten a guy like that and brought them in, actually developed them, and been okay with that transition. Instead, now you're basically just going to shot put a guy into there. So I actually disagree with the honorable mention of Mitch Morse, but I want to get your thoughts on that.
You know what? When I was looking at my list, I was thinking about Mitch Morse. But then, to be honest, I thought about who our backups might be. You got Ryan Bates, you got Ike Bacher. I'm not horrified at the thought of one of those guys, being center for a little while. If God forbid, knock on wood, Mitch Morse should have to, depart for any reason. I'm not horrified at the thought of one of those guys taking over momentarily. So I didn't put him on the list, but honorable mention, I feel like it's fair. I'll call fair because he would probably be 7 or 8.
Okay. All right. So, man, I'm gonna.
I feel like my list might be a little bit different. I do.
All right. Well, all right. So we're gonna switch to the defensive side now. So if you had any other offensive guys out there, the list is definitely different.
I had no more offensive players actually.
All right. So defensive side, I'm gonna disagree with this one. I'm gonna disagree, but the first guy is Von Miller.
Yeah, I disagree.
You disagree with my disagreement, or you disagree with him being on the list?
I disagree with him being on the list.
All right, you tell me why.
Because we've seen the team without Von Miller, and it was perfectly fine. It didn't have the necessary pass rush. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it did, but we were okay without it. We were still one of, if not the best team in the league, right? Yeah. So, Von Miller is just spoil of riches. At this point, it's just are you serious? Because even without Von Miller, we still got Jordan Phillips, Tim Settle, Daquan Jones, Ed Oliver, Greg Rousseau in the second year, AJ Epinesa in the third year, Boogie Basham in the second year. We still got Shaq Lawson, right? So we still got plenty of pass rushers to go around, right? I want him on the team. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I don't want Von Miller. Yeah, no, right? Let's not be ridiculous. You know what I mean? But in terms of this list, I don't think he belongs here because we have so much depth. And not just depth, but pretty good depth at his position. Is there a gap? Absolutely. But I'm not horrified at the thought of Shaq Lawson having to play extended minutes because Von Miller is not able to play.
So That's not the approach I was going to take, but I don't disagree with you. The approach I was going to take is the man hasn't taken a snap for this team yet. How can you say that he's a name that the team can least afford to
That's
lose?
fair
You know what I
too.
mean?
Mhm.
So, like, I'm not gonna like if I hire somebody at work, I'm not gonna walk in day one and be like, can't afford to lose this person. I have no idea, I have no idea who they are or why they were hired. Like if my boss hires them or whatever, I'm not gonna be like, can't afford to lose this person. I have no idea who they are. I don't even know what their name is. They're just being introduced. So, I mean, that's no disrespect to Von Miller at all. I know the chance of him seeing this is none, but there's no disrespect to Von Miller at all. Obviously, the man has won a couple of Super Bowls, and he's been one of the best at his position in a generation or five. But I haven't seen him in a Bills uniform take meaningful NFL, snap counts. So I'm not gonna put him on there. The next one is Jordan Poyer, and there is that on your list?
He's on my list. He's not next, but he is on my list.
All right. So for me, just don't want to switch this up real quick. For me, I don't know. I don't want to say like I agree because I do. Because Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde, regardless of their accolades individually, are the best safety tandem in the NFL. But I don't want to agree either because I have I have confidence in the guys that are coming up behind him, but also to the realization of his age. Um, he doesn't have that extensive of an injury history, but I mean the man lacerated a kidney that can't feel good or to be good on your body in the long term. So where he's at, and truly, I mean, it comes down to. I mean, I guess in the context of the conversation, I would agree. Yes, it's a guy that you can least afford to lose. But I mean, the reality is you're probably a little bit more on the you're going to lose this guy side after this season due to not being able to afford him for the money that he wants, which he's fairly owed, and just that age. You know what I mean? So, all
Oh,
right,
that's
yeah,
fair.
I'll agree. I'll agree that he deserves to be on this list, but also based in reality, I don't think that he's going to be on the team in 2026 or after this season.
So that's fair. However, in the context of the question, it
Yeah.
was for the 2022 season in which I do have him on this list, just because I don't know if that was a Perino article. Was it
This is
CBS.com?
well, it's Perino and Talbot.
Talbot. Okay, all right. Shout
So
out
I
to
can tell you,
Talbot.
Perino
No. Hold
specifically
on.
had Jordan Poyer.
Oh, okay. All right. So Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde are both on my list, and they're kind of like I don't know if they both have them as well, but they're both on my list, and they're like interchangeable. I have Micah Hyde slightly above Jordan Poyer because I think Micah Hyde is slightly better than Jordan Poyer. All right, they're not even third on my list though. I'll tell you guys that a little bit later. But Micah Hyde and then Jordan Poyer are fourth and fifth respectively, and I say that they are on this list because again it's really about the talent gap for me from one position to the next, right? For those of you like anime, I'm watching Hunter x Hunter right now, and like Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde are like the old dude. I forgot his name, but he like the old dude. They like mad powerful, right? They're the best safety tandem in the NFL. They are second to none, right? And if you lose half of that, God forbid you lose both of them, I think your secondary is still good just because it's a Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott coach defense, but I don't think it's nearly as lethal as it is, with these two guys on the football field. I don't think your safety net is nearly as strong or you're as confident in it as you are if these two are on the football field together. So that's why they're both on my list, because I don't think we could afford to lose either or both of them for this upcoming season. Now, going forward from here, you can, you might be able to plan for a replacement for Jordan Poyer and plan for a replacement for Micah Hyde. But as of right now, since we don't have that, man, Nah, I need both of these dudes on the field.
So this is going to spark an interesting kind of question about that because Micah Hyde is not the last name. So you really got to pick your poison. Do you want to lose Micah? Do you want to lose Poyer? Do you want to keep Micah?
I would rather lose Poyer than Micah.
So I'll do something different for this one. I'll tell you the name, but then I'll read you. Ryan Talbot had this one. I'll read you what he wrote because I think it's something that I would write because it's kind of the tale of both worlds. All right. So the honorable mention here is Tre'Davious White.
We already lost him.
So this is why I wanted to read this. So he said, did the Bills secondary fare well without White in the regular season? Yes, the unit played very well with Levi Wallace and Dane Jackson, something I've pointed out multiple times because I'm also a Dane Jackson fan. But look no further than the divisional round to see White's value. Buffalo's secondary could not stop Patrick Mahomes and company last year. I'd be willing to bet the outcome of last year's playoff game would have been significantly different had White been healthy and available. What are your thoughts?
I get it. I understand what he's saying. And does Tre'Davious White make you better? Absolutely. But under the context, to me, it's the same reason that Von Miller's not on the list to me. I don't think just because you're an amazingly great player that you automatically should be on the list because, I mean, we still have the best secondary in the NFL, even without a top 5 corner. So, yes, if you add the top 5 corner, then 1,000,000% I'm all for it. Go ahead. But in the context of this list, we're still very high performing even without him. So I wouldn't put him on here necessarily because Dane Jackson obviously showed his worth last year. And if you're asking me who would I rather start the season with, Kaiir Elam or undrafted Levi Wallace, who runs like a 4.8. I'm going to go with the 6'1 guy with the 6'4 wingspan that runs a 4.3, if you don't mind. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'll go with that guy. So I still think that there is some significant talent at the cornerback position that can be honed and especially with this coaching staff and how well they manage defense or secondaries. So I don't think that Tre'Davious White should.
No,
okay,
listen,
honorable mention.
So I'll agree with you. I do agree with you because of the simple fact that you have. So talking about affording to lose for this season, I absolutely agree with you. Looking back at a year ago, yes, did Levi and Dane hold it down? Absolutely. To an extent, Dane Jackson performed better than Trey did. He's more of an aggressive guy. He's going to get involved in the run game more. Excuse me. So he performed to an extent in some areas better than Trey did in a shorter amount of time than Trey did. If you're talking about in the context of this 2022, I mean, we know that we're opening the season without Trey. Now, don't get me wrong, having Trey and Kaiir Elam out there is a no-brainer. That's your peak top scenario. But if I had to lose Trey going into the season or during the season at this point, with the expectation set for the type of player, the caliber of player that Kaiir Elam is, and knowing what Dane Jackson can now do sustainably throughout an NFL season, not just in the regular season, but in the playoffs where he maintained that, I'm comfortable with losing Tre'Davious White. Now, we're not going to. The man's locked up under contract, whatever. It would be injury again. But it simply comes down to the fact that you shored up your insurance policy by drafting Kaiir Elam. And you know that you have a bona fide guy farther down the depth chart in Dane Jackson. So I agree with you. I agree with you that I would have put Micah Hyde on the list as well because it makes sense. So I do want to move on here and ask you another super just intense question.
Wait, is it about the list? Oh, before we go, that's a good question. Before we go here, I just want to say the last two players on my list real quick.
All right, yeah.
The last two players on my list are, whether you guys like him or not, is Tremaine Edmonds. Okay. This season is a bust if Tremaine Edmonds gets injured. All right. Our defense is not the number one defense in the NFL. All right. We are not going to be performing well in the playoffs or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Unless unless Matt Milano legit just moves over to middle linebacker and ends up being better than any of us could ever expect, it's not happening. Tremaine Edmonds and also Tyler Bass, because Tyler Bass is legit. He's elite now, and we can't do this season without him. We're gonna need him.
And listen, man, I agree with you on the Tremaine. I agree with you on the Tremaine Edmonds front. I've been one of the few people who have been out here kind of stumping for Tremaine, saying like, listen, just because you can't hear the hit up in the broadcast booth doesn't mean that he's not. Like, if you look at the numbers, he's you can't stop the run. He has a higher run stoppage percentage than Matt Milano. Well, that's just because he's the middle linebacker. All right, he still has a higher run stop percentage than Matt Milano by like a mile. So
and I like defense was guard. The defensive line and run defense was terrible last year. So that affects him negatively.
Absolutely. And it's not to say that I didn't want his play to be more than where it was, because there's absolutely times where he's making blatantly bad decisions or something is pulling his attention away and he's falling for these tricks, but you can't say that he's not bad. And again, the age plays a factor into it. You can say he's been in the NFL for 5 years now. All right, cool. He's 22. He's legitimately younger than I am right now. All right. The kid is legitimately a child. All right. My guy is like me, is sitting down figuring out how to, well, he probably pays somebody to pay taxes for it. But like the guy's like figuring out taxes and like how to grocery shop for yourself or for himself. Like he's worried about that, right? Like the 5 years means nothing. It's just 5 extra years that he has up on some other guys. But no, I do like, and then you said your other one was Tyler Bass?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Tyler Bass. And who did we just take? What was the punter that we just took?
Matt Araiza.
It was him. All right. For some reason, I thought he went to Arizona, but he's from Arizona.
He's from Arizona State. And actually, you mentioning that kind of makes Tyler Bass off this list by default. Because as good as Tyler Bass is, we still have – well, no.
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. The punt game.
Yeah. No. I was going to – the punter, he also kicks field goals. Matt Araiza also kicks field goals. So I was thinking that. But Tyler Bass is legitimately one of the best kickers in the NFL. So I still feel like the gap would be really large. So I'm going to put Tyler Bass back on my list. But to answer your question, is Dawson Knox a top 5 tight end? All right. Darren Waller just put out a list. Let me think about Darren Waller's list. He said Kyle Pitts. He said him, Kelsey, Kittle, and who was the 5th person he said? I don't know. But I don't think Kyle Pitts is better than Dawson Knox right now. Is he has more potential? Sure. I mean, he looks like Megatron. He really legit looks like Calvin Johnson. So, I mean, sure, absolutely is more potential. I wouldn't say he's better than Dawson Knox right now. I feel like as long as Dawson Knox can catch the football, Dawson Knox is an elite tight end. So I would say that he's not better than Travis Kelce. He's not better than George Kittle. He isn't better than Darren Waller. Darren Waller is like basically another wide receiver out there on the field.
So I found this article last year. All right. I'm going to bring it up again. It's from NFL.com. It's from October of last year. All right. So we're talking the season just started. All right. Top 10 tight ends of the 2021 season. All right. Number 1 was Mark Andrews, which I agree with to an extent. Simply,
but he's not better than Dawson Knox. I agree, but he's not better than Dawson Knox right now.
So I would say I agree with him being number one on the list, but that's because he's the only receiving target that Baltimore had/has. So I get it. All right. It makes him like the number one tight end because he basically has to play the tight end and receiver role and a blocking role because the Ravens last year thought Sammy Watkins was going to be their number one wide receiver option. All right. So this list, and it's by Nick Shook. All right. On NFL.com. Number one was Mark Andrews. Number two is Travis Kelce. Dawson Knox is number 3.
Wow.
Top 3 NFL tight end. Now, just for comparison, it's the top 10 list. Dalton Schultz from Dallas at number 4. Darren Waller at number 5. Mike Gesicki at number 6. Kyle Pitts at 7. T.J. Hawkinson at 8. Noah Fant at 9. And Hunter Henry at 10. I mean, those are good names to be in with. But I guess, would you agree with this list? And again, remember, this is October of last year. We didn't have a full
must have been injured
playoffs. He was. He didn't even start the season last year.
Okay.
So what do you think from at least that list? Do you think that he's in this is top 3, but in terms of being a top 5 tight end, do you think that that's correct?
Yeah, I think he is. Him and Mark Andrews may be a little bit closer than I'm just like, maybe I'm speaking in hyperbole, like, Dawson Knox is better than Mark Andrews. So it may be closer than I'm saying it is, but I still do think he is a top 5 tight end. In talent wise, for sure, like he has the potential to be top 1 tight end. So he just really has to put it all together. It's really a Josh Allen situation. Just knock that over to the tight end position, and you got like a bona fide superstar potential player who really just needs to learn how to figure it out. And I think he can do that. So I would say yes. Kittle, Kelce, Waller, and those are the only ones I could say for sure are better than him, maybe Mark Andrews. So that's like 4.5.
Mark Andrews has to be, like, he's on any list for me for sure. But again, he's also legitimately the only receiving option that Baltimore has. So it is kind of on him. But yeah, man, I would agree. I think Dawson Knox is, if he's not top 5, because there's other great names like Mike Gesicki's a fantastic tight end. Like
beast.
Like when you get to number 5, you can kind of switch a couple guys out from week to week. And just because last year's NFL season was insane, but if Dawson Knox is not at least top 5, he's at least top 10 no matter what. Like he's just. This is also by virtue of the tight end position. You're either a fantastic tight end who's really good at blocking and catching and helping your QB in the offense, or you're Lee Smith, whose job is to go out there and just pancake the crap out of people because that's what you do.
Yeah. I mean, and Dawson Knox can do both, block and receive. He could be a little bit of a better blocker, but he still does it, at a higher level for a mostly receiving tight end. You know what I mean?
Right. And he did catch Josh's throwaway. Wasn't even a pass. Did catch it for a touchdown. So, props to him. But so I want to get your take on this, and we can kind of head into the end here. Not the end, but kind of head into start the slide. But like we mentioned, I did my interview with Christian Wade last week, and you and I discussed afterwards some of the parts of the interview. I don't know if you got a chance to see the whole thing yet, but it was a fantastic interview. And the one thing, like you brought up at the beginning of the show, is I was always kind of like stumping for him. I was always like, he can make it. He's, and people are like, dude, he's never going to see the field of play. Like, they don't even want him like on the team. They're like, yo, it doesn't make sense to keep him around 4 years later,
right?
To not do it. And so I asked him the question of, man, how close were you? And or do you feel, if you didn't know, do you feel you were close to making the 53-man roster? And his initial answer was like, they didn't really tell us, and I didn't really know. And I was like, all right, that's fair. It's a lot's happening, whatever. But then we were talking later about something else, and he kind of answered it for me. And this was, again, as the Christian Wade guy of Bills Mafia, I was like, this is the answer I want. I can throw it in people's faces whenever they talk, crap about, I got the jersey or whatever.
Right.
And he basically came back and when we talked about it, and he brought up not last year but the season before when Singletary was like in and out. He was out for a little bit when Moss broke his leg, and it was like TJ Yeldon was like the one running back on the team, and it was like him and Antonio Williams on the practice squad. And he was like, they brought up, so they had like Yeldon, if it even was Yeldon, it might not have been. I think it was. They like had Yeldon. He said that they elevated Antonio Williams, and he said they wanted to elevate me. I was like, dude, internally, I was like, dude, you just told me that you almost took meaningful NFL snaps. And he's like, the reason that they couldn't elevate me was because the rule is once you got placed on the practice squad in that protected position, not only could another team not take you, but your team can't elevate you. You're there for the year. So then he said, so the Bills, meaning McDermott and Bede, went to the league in the offseason last year and got the NFL to change that rule, meaning if players got injured, he could be elevated up out of that spot. And he was talking about how he was really excited to be able to have that opportunity. Like, he obviously hoped it didn't happen, but if it did, like he was ready for his chance. He was ready to actually try and shoot for the 53-man roster. And that was like the backup. Obviously, he got hurt in the preseason, like right before the first preseason game. And he had the season-ending surgery. And what was interesting to me, though, I don't know if we had talked about this before, but for anybody that has seen the interview, I said, man, when did you kind of like take me through the you're being cut process? Like, I don't want to sound horrible about it, but I was like, what is it like being cut from an NFL team? Like, what's that process? What are you thinking? And I was like, you got cut at the end of the year. What are you thinking? He goes, I knew the entire year that I was being cut at the end. I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, after I got injured, they told me, like, we're basically paying you to not do anything for us because you're injured now. You didn't make the team before. So just want to let you know, once you get healthy, that's our intent. And so he knew for the entire season, didn't say anything, whatever. And then when he got cut, he knew. And he had almost a full year of knowing, or 6, 7, 8 months of knowing, like, hey, I'm going to be cut. So my question here, my reaction is, had this rule not been in place, or had he not gotten injured and he would have been able to play, what's kind of the reaction to you as a fan to know, like, hey, Christian Wade not only could have, but like was on the cut, like was going to get regular season NFL playing time, and we could have seen that happen. So just as like somebody that watched the interview, or is like hearing about this, what is your reaction to that?
So I actually have a few friends that got to the NFL, and then a few that were in the vicinity of playing D1 college football and trying out for NFL teams, etc. So I kind of have like a little bit of inside information about how all that works. So it really doesn't surprise me. But looking at Christian Wade, I feel like he could have been a player. Like he could have actually helped us in a lot of ways. Like, just looking at some of the backs we've had on our teams, and there were some guys who, if you told me it was Christian Wade instead of TJ Yeldon, I wouldn't have been mad. If you told me it was Christian Wade instead of like a Matt Brooks, we realized that he wasn't going to give us anything other than speed, I wouldn't be mad. So it does suck. And, it really sucks how injuries can really like derail, your progress. And you get an opportunity to play in the league, and now you get a season-ending injury. And because you got the season-ending injury, they're not going to bring you back. Like, that really sucks. So I feel for him.
Yeah. No, it was, again, like, obviously as a fan, I was like, dude, I'm like, that sucks. because we could have gotten you. And you could have shut a lot of people up. I'm sure. For me, again, I would have been like, "Yo, man, if you could have just shut some people up, it would have been great." But no, like I agree. I mean, he had and we talked about it. And again, there's the full interview is there, where he talked about like what was from rugby, like what was the easy transition, like what was the easiest to transition over, what was the hardest to transition over, what were the struggles. We talked in depth actually about the International Pathways program and what they go through, and the fact that it's like they do 4 months of like daily, basically mini camp. I called it a mini camp. He was like, "That's a perfect explanation for it." So you're basically doing mini camp every day for probably like 10 hours a day, and for 4 months straight. And then they do a combine, and then the teams basically get to draft you for that division that year. So like the Bills chose him. Like he wasn't assigned to the team, which is, I think, for me and a lot of other people's like, I think that was the belief, is that like the NFL was like, here, take this player for the. No. Like the teams go out and they found Christian Wade and they brought him in. So, and again, this is going back 3-4 something years, where you're looking at running back talent. The hope there clearly was to develop this guy into a usable running back. And I think that we talked about the preseason game. He actually gave a little bit of insight into that second run that could have turned into that second touchdown. He gave a little bit of insight into what he was thinking and like the rugby versus, NFL kind of trained side of him there. So like I said, it was really just in depth, really open interview for anybody that was interested in, hearing more about that. But speaking of hearing more about that, what is the Bills Super Bowl time frame? And then I have like a follow-up-ish question to that before we hit our last one. But just really quick, right now, starting with this season, what is our time frame for making the Super Bowl? For winning one. I shouldn't say making one, winning one.
It really depends on how healthy Josh Allen stays, to be completely honest with you. And honestly, I wouldn't even say that. I would go as far to say it depends on how well Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott can work together for the duration of their careers. If they can have like a 20, 30-year partnership where they just are able to do this 2 or 3 more times, I feel like it could potentially happen. Look at the way they did it. Like, Sean McDermott came in 2017, and he legit helped us make the playoffs for the first time in this millennium. So, although Brandon Beane is also amazing at his job, so is Sean McDermott. And Sean McDermott has changed the culture of this football team. So now, thinking about that, I feel like as long as they can, they changed the culture of this football team before we got our freak athlete quarterback, our God tier quarterback, right? So if they can continue to cultivate the right culture for this team, continue to put all the pieces together and switch them out as they need to, kind of like the Patriots did in the way that they did, I feel like this could go for as long as they allow themselves to go.
So that kind of goes into my next question, because the one thing that you didn't really touch on was the financial side of it. Because I agree with you with everything there, but of course, money is everybody's kind of restriction here. But do we think that Brandon Beane has the finesse when it comes to the cap to extend that time frame indefinitely?
Yeah, I do. I mean, and you know what it is? I think that we've seen Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott, and his respective coordinators be able to get the most out of football players, right? So I look at with Brandon Beane, the way he might organize his roster. You've got maybe 2 or 3 blue chip players, and then you got maybe 5, 6, 7 players that are like high quality players that do their job at an extremely high level, right? And then you kind of sprinkle in uh, above average to good talent, around them, right? There aren't really many uh, mediocre players, and if they are, then they have like incredible focus and incredible mentorship abilities. They bring something positive to the environment, right? And I think the way that they have found the perfect balance of those types of players and have put them in positions the same way over and over again. Like, for instance, you start off with a Cole Beasley and a John Brown, right? And then you switch out a John Brown for an Emmanuel Sanders, and then you switch out a Cole Beasley for a Jamison Crowder, right? Like they're taking these high level players, getting high level play out of them, and then they're able to go and find other players that people may have thought couldn't perform at the highest level, and then they come and they perform with the best quarterback in the league, and they perform at a higher level. So I think that they're able to get the most out of players a lot of times, and I think that'll be why the financial part of it isn't as big of a nuisance as it is for most teams, is because they're good at developing talent. They're good at scouting college players to see who's really good and who we can find in the 6th round that might start for us in a year or two, right? They're great at that stuff, and they're a lot better than most teams are. So that's why I think Brandon Beane to be able to do it.
I don't disagree with you, is all I got to say. You covered it, man. I appreciate it. So heading into our last thing here is I want to do, something similar to what I did before. But, from the Buffalo Down article, Bills who won't return after 2022. And I want to see, what do we think about this? Do we agree? Do we disagree? And this was by Brandon Croce. It's from legitimately a week ago. So I haven't seen the full list because this is one of those articles where you got to you read the first part and you got to click to another page to read the next one. And then, you know what I mean? So the first one is Cody Ford. Is Cody Ford a guy that we expect won't return after 2022? Why or why not? You're muted.
Sorry. If this season goes the same way his first couple seasons have gone, then yes. However, I will say that with the addition of Aaron Kromer, they bring in Ken Dorsey, and it's a completely different offensive system. We saw what the last offensive system did. They were switching them around, making them play different positions and stuff like that. So if they can maybe keep them in a consistent place and get the best out of him, utilize his talent to the highest potential, then I feel like he could still be a player. But if that's not true and he's just not good, then yeah, he's gonna be gone.
And I agree with you once more. The Buffalo Bills, the NFL overall, but the Buffalo Bills specifically are a team where if you're not meeting expectations, they'll give you chance after chance. Well, not chance after chance, but they'll give you chances to redeem that. And there's nothing that would have really at this point allowed us to have gained a lot from losing out on Cody Ford. And I would agree that his rotating between guard and tackle is what really hurt him in the long run. So if he doesn't perform well this year, like you said, he's definitely gone. I mean, it's easy. It's his last contract here, I think. So it's just easy enough to go hey, man, we're not re-signing you. And that way, you don't have to take a cap hit or anything like that. So second guy on this list is this one's going to be a little bit more contentious of a name than Cody Ford. I feel like Cody Ford is probably pretty easy. He's a pretty easy target for this conversation. But Devin Singletary is a second name on this list. And it's interesting to me because we say year after year after year how the Bills aren't really good at drafting and developing running backs. But that's not really true at all. It's the offensive scheme, the offensive line that doesn't really allow them to thrive. And now, admittedly, Brian Daboll, to all of our noticings, did not utilize the running backs correctly. I don't think at any point really, except for maybe a fluke week here or there, didn't utilize the running backs correctly. Specifically Singletary and Frank Gore were my big in that 2018 playoff game against the Texans, where you're like, man, there's no way he's having Frank Gore run on the outside with those, paper bags wrapped around his feet. There's no way. But there was a way, and he did it, and we lost that game. So Devin Singletary is on this list, and I definitely don't agree with that.
I don't agree with it either. If you watching or listen to anything I say, then you'll know that I think Devin Singletary is amazing. I think that Devin Singletary is a top 10 talent back in this league, and that if he's given the subsequent carries and actual blocking in front of him and the actual scheme that is actually fit for him that works, I feel like he'll be good. He's averaging damn near 5 yards a carry with this awful offensive line, or if at least offensive run scheme that was the last couple of years. And people are like, oh, no, he's not good. I'm like, what are you watching? Like, what are you talking? Like, he averaged almost 5 yards a carry with that. Every Bills fan in the community can confidently say this was not a good run scheme last year.
Yeah.
And he averaged almost 5 yards a carry with it. And yet people are saying he's not good. Make it make sense, guys. Like, seriously. Like, come on. Think about what you're saying before you say it. Seriously. So it really makes my head hurt. I don't understand what people be watching on Sundays. But Devin Singletary is one of the best backs in this league for my money. And then if you're able to pay him cheaply, because, the offensive run game was putrid the first 2 years, his first couple of years in on the team, they're able to get him for a little bit cheaper. So 100% you should bring back Devin Singletary.
Yeah, no, I agree once more. You don't have to look at the stats. You don't even have to go back. Go back to his freshman year. Go back to his rookie year. That offensive line was built for the run game. Now, granted, that offensive line also had, LaShawn McCoy. Like, you don't have to worry about a lot of that stuff because Shady was going to find a way. But Singletary
that was good. They had Richie Incognito. And Aaron Cromer was the offensive line coach.
What that initial offensive line did not do well was pass protection. What has been since Singletary's rookie year has been an offensive line that's average to above average at pass protection, protecting the quarterback, and below average in allowing the run game to thrive. And that's not what you want at all. You want an offensive line that can protect your quarterback, but also open up for guys like Devin Singletary and Zach Moss. So I agree with you, but it's as simple as go back and look at the offensive line and their consistency and their ability to play his rookie year, and go back and look at it last year. And you can tell, though, like last year, there were a couple of times where, he was clearly fed up with it. And he did a couple of, broke off a couple really good runs. But I don't want 3 or 4 running backs on the team. Which is why he said in his presser after we drafted Mr. Cook there, is I don't need my running back to run. And a lot of people did not agree with that, and that's fine. But I did, because that's what I've been saying for the last year. I don't need my running back to run. He can if he wants to or if he needs to, but I need a running back to run. I don't need my quarterback to run. So third, 3 out of 4 names on this list, and we'll wrap up here, is an interesting one because this is a guy we haven't seen take a snap yet. He is here on a 1-year deal, but Jamison Crowder. Now, obviously, the question mark is long-term, right? 1-year deal. You got competition with a very similar player in Isaiah McKenzie, who is locked into a longer deal. So the question really here is, do we think Jamison Crowder is not going to return past 2022? And for me, I think that really truly depends on Isaiah McKenzie and how he performs in what's assumably an expanded role on the offensive side.
I think it depends on 2 things, and I don't think either one of them is Isaiah McKenzie. I feel like Isaiah McKenzie has his little role set for him. And I don't think Jamison Crowder is gonna. I think it's going to be whether Jamison Crowder plays well or whether Khalil Shakir plays well, right? I feel like if Khalil Shakir and Isaiah McKenzie both play well, we don't really need a need. We don't really have a need for Jamison Crowder unless Jamison Crowder balls the hell out, right? Because if Jamison Crowder balls the hell out, then of course you're going to bring him back. If he wants to come back, obviously, because we're not going to be paying him more money. He's just going to be, you know what I mean? We might pay him a little bit more money, but like it ain't going to be nothing crazy. Like you're not going to get paid top receiver money.
Right.
You know, so if he does ball out and would like to come back to Buffalo, then I do think that opportunity will be there for him. And especially if a guy like Khalil Shakir doesn't, you know, play the first season or play well. And if Isaiah McKenzie has a dud year, then you're going to be relying on a guy like Jamison Crowder. But I don't know. I'm not mad at this one because
you're going to be mad at the next one, I assure you.
Yeah, I could see him not, and I could see him being on the team. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I get why he's not. He's here on a 1-year deal. We haven't seen, again, much to my my similar argument for Von Miller, why Von Miller should have been on that list, is we haven't seen him play for the team yet, so you don't really know. Now this guy, this last player, is a player that Mr. Croce, Brandon Croce here, is expecting will not return to the Bills after 2022. This player has made the Pro Bowl twice and has over 100 tackles in each season. But he's expecting he won't return after 2022.
What? Are you serious?
That is Mr. Tremaine Edmonds.
Why?
Now he does note that this would be the biggest loss. He does add in that he's made the Pro Bowl twice. He has over 100 total tackles each season. But is concerned that he doesn't make big impact plays regularly. And there are questions if he will ever develop into a top-tier linebacker.
Oh, my God. See, oh, my God, bro.
However, he does go on to say, even with those questions, he's likely to get a massive contract in free agency because of his unique combination of size and speed, as well as the fact that he's 24 years old. You've made the case for why he should get a contract to stay with the team.
Thank you.
Two-time Pro Bowler, over 100 tackles a season, has a better run stop percentage than Matt Milano, who everybody wants to slot over to middle linebacker, even though he's not built to play middle linebacker and cannot play middle linebacker and has never played middle linebacker, versus a guy who's 24, Pro Bowl twice in 4 years. Pro Bowl twice in 4 years. 50% of the time the man's had Pro Bowl seasons. 100-plus tackles
in one of the years he was injured.
In one of the years he was injured. 100-plus tackles in each of those 4 seasons, is only 24 years old. Also has an insane size and speed for that size. Shouldn't come back to the Bills.
Yeah, no, that's ridiculous. And not only is it ridiculous, but he won't develop into one of the top linebackers. What? He's already one of the top linebackers. Like, he's not elite. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, he's not elite. I'm not going to sit here and say he's Darius Leonard or anything like that. But he's already one of the best linebackers in the league. I would say he's top 10 linebackers, right? And you mentioned that he's young as hell. He is a freakishly just athletic type between size and speed. He's gonna have an improved defensive line this year. He can cover pretty well. He can run defend. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't see what people have against Tremaine Edmonds. He doesn't make impact plays enough. All right, but if I have a number one defense that is not asking him to make impact plays, what they're asking this defense to do is not allow anything over the top and to not allow touchdowns. And they do that at a high level. Like, what more do you want from these people? Like, I don't.
My biggest thing, and again, I don't know, I don't have an answer to that question, because if you compare him to Josh Allen, the guy who was legitimately taken in the same round as him in the same year of the NFL draft, right? They're both first round picks in that 2018 draft. If Josh Allen makes a mistake, it's everybody else's fault. Josh Allen can never make mistakes. And now this is again the Bills fan rhetoric, right? Josh Allen makes a mistake, it's not his fault. The running back didn't do it, the wide receiver didn't do it, the all-line didn't do it. Brian Daboll called a bad play, and admittedly, you and I have both said here many, many times that Brian Daboll made the wrong choice, and he did in a lot of those situations.
I'm one of those people, so I'm not even gonna sit here and pretend I'm not.
But when Tremaine Edmonds makes a mistake, it's all the opposite of the things we said. He can't do it. He's not a top tier linebacker. He's a below average. Again, 2 Pro Bowls, 100+ tackles in a season. Like it doesn't make sense to me what the bias is, because it's truly at this point it's a bias against Tremaine Edmonds. For what reason? Again, I don't know. You don't know. I don't know. Nobody knows.
It's the big play. People fall in love with the big play. Like Diggs, Trayvon Diggs this past season. It was like statistically one of the worst corners in the league. Like he got burned more than like anybody else or something crazy like that. But because he had mad interceptions and they popped out on screen, and he plays with the Cowboys, of course, then like he's a superstar. He's a Pro Bowler. He's an all-pro. But a guy like Tremaine Edmonds, who doesn't have those eye-popping plays, but also isn't getting burned every other play, doesn't get recognition. So
Tremaine Edmonds, I would argue, is the most Bills player on the Buffalo Bills. I would argue, because he's a dude who just shows up. What was that?
Nothing. Go ahead.
Okay. I would say it's because he shows up and he just does his work. You're right. He doesn't have those splash plays. People point to the big Matt Milano splash play where you could hear the hit up in the broadcast booth. If that's what you want, cool, fine. I trust me. I love when that happens. That's the equivalent to like watching old school hockey and watching somebody get, destroyed at like 40 miles an hour on ice. It's amazing. It sends shivers up your spine. You love to see it. But the dude has over 100+ combined tackles a season. You can't say he's not showing up and putting in the work. Yes, does he often, not often, does he sometimes miss really big plays that allow things like the Chiefs to score a touchdown? Yes. Are you going to blame him for it? Maybe. Where was everybody else on that play? Because I got to tell you what, Matt Milano's not even in the frame. So kid puts in the work. He just doesn't have, I think that people are relying on that size and that speed, which are fine and good, but you still have to put the pieces around it. Like that's saying, well, Josh Allen is an absolute athletic specimen, and then them not having put the pieces around him to succeed. You have to do that. And Tremaine Edmonds is that on that side, but like I said, he's the most Buffalo Bills player on that team. He shows up, he's silent, he puts in the work, and he leaves, and he moves on to the next task.
Yeah. So I remember I was having a debate with somebody, I forget who it was, but I was talking about Josh Allen and Tremaine Edmonds and how after 4 seasons, Tremaine Edmonds is a good linebacker, but not good enough. And Josh Allen is this absolute superstar, right? And so I was asking him, I was like, wait, so and they admitted that Josh Allen had an absolutely rapid growth. And I was like, so how is it that Josh Allen has a rapid growth turning into this superstar? You admit that 4 years is typically not enough time for a player to turn into a superstar, but yet you're judging Tremaine Edmonds for not being that superstar in 4 years. So which one is it? You guys, again, it's the same thing with Devin Singletary for me. I don't know what y'all be watching on Sundays. I don't know what y'all looking at or if y'all just listening to somebody on sports radio talk about it or what, but yeah, you're wrong. Like Tremaine Edmonds is a great linebacker, and he's going to be one of the best linebackers in the league in my estimation. If you let Tremaine Edmonds get from the Buffalo Bills and he goes to like Pittsburgh or New England or something like that, we're going to regret it for the rest of his career.
Yeah. Dude, Pittsburgh is notoriously good at building a defense. They're shaky on an offense, But you want to talk about consistently over decades, literally a decade and a half now, consistently one of the consistently best top 5, top 10, if not top 5 defenses in the league. It's Pittsburgh. He goes there. Dude, that guy under Coach Tomlin, 100 plus. He's looking at 200 plus tackles, combined tackles this season. He'll do ridiculous stuff. So keep him here. I just changed my Twitter name to Tremaine Edmonds season. So just in case you guys get confused, that's what I literally just did it right now. So I want to thank you guys for coming in and watching this week of the Rust Belt Report. Quick programming note that the next episode won't be till July 14th. I will be out of town on that vacation I mentioned. And so I'll be coming back, I think either that day or just the day before. So definitely not enough time to plan for a whole show, but we're coming back with, this whole season, man, is NFL player interviews, kids that are committed to college, like big time college interviews, like Syracuse, the Naval Academy, stuff like that. So we're coming in with a hot and heavy season here. So the next episode will be July 14th, not July 7th. So if you're looking for a July 7th show, go back and watch the Christian Wade interview. That's all I got to tell you. So thank you guys. And I appreciate it. We appreciate it. And we will see you in 2 weeks. Go Bills.
Go Bills.